Priatelia, ja vás vítam pri tomto videu. Už včera som odvysielala video s názvom UFO, veľký podvod na celý svet, ktorý prichádza. A dneska by som chcela nadviazať a pokračovať v hovorení o tejto téme na tému UFO, ktoré momentálne renovuje celý svet. Všade na internete môžete vidieť, ako ľudia po celom svete robia rôzne videá, rôzne fotky a vo veľkej časti sveta už aj vlády začínajú dokonca priznávať a odhaľovať fakty o mimozemskej civilizácii, o UFO a tak ďalej. Takže ja by som dneska chcela pokračovať tej téme, ktorú som včera otvorila na tému UFO. A v podstate chcem rozoberať, aký je teda kresťanský pohľad na tento fenomén UFO, čo prichádza na tento svet. A hovorí sa o poslednej inkurzii padlých anjelov a ako súvisia s vytrhnutím a čo je ich agenda. Na konci tohto videa, kde ja dorozprávam, tak vám budem chcieť priložiť ešte jedno video, ktoré súvisí s touto témou a myslím si, že je to dosť podstatné pre všetkých ľudí, nielen pre kresťanov, aby neboli zaťahnutí do tohto blúdu, ale aj pre tých, či to sú ateisti, či ste rímskokatolícka cirkev alebo hoci aká cirkev, ktorá ste nábožnosť, je úplne jedno, ktorá ste religia, aby ste si vypočuli toto, čo rozprávam, pretože to je veľmi dôležité. Ja verím tomu, že tento UFO podvod, ktorý sa teraz chystá a už ho inštalujú, bude mať veľký súvis s vytrhnutím, takže zostaňte bdelí a zostaňte v pozore, aby ste nepodľahli ďalšiemu podvodu. Len pred 48 hodinami sa na kongrese v USA opäť znovu konali verejné stretnutia o rastúcom záujme a vierohodných správach o fenoméne UFO. Takže opäť v poslednej dobe sú tu ešte vierohodnejšie UFO mimozemské pozorovania, taktiež vznikli nejaké nahrávky od očitých svedkov. Počúvame o ďalších únosoch, ktoré teda svedkovia predkladajú, že videli, a taktiež mám pocit, že by sa malo o tejto záležitosti jednať a znova sa podeliť s vami ešte raz o to. Takže pripravte sa, priatelia, na to, čo oni určite nazvú ako také mäkké odhalenie. No, neurobme tú chybu, že tomuto podvodu podľahnete. Tieto údajné UFO nie sú pre Božie deti. Nie je to pre nás nič nové, tieto neidentifikovateľné lietajúce objekty, alebo ako to nazývajú, alebo ako to nazvať. Naozaj sa buď jedná o anielské démonické bytosti, ale ja skutočne verím, že sú fakt naozaj démonickí, takže naozaj verím, že tieto UFO a tento údajný mimozemský život budú veľkou súčasťou silného klamu, o ktorom sa hovorí v 2. Tesaloničanom 2.11. A to konkrétne, preto Boh na nich zosiela moc bludu, aby uverili lži. Antikrist použije tento silný klam, aby pomohol vysvetliť vytrhnutie. Vytrhnutiu, ktorému príde, keď zmiznú milióny ľudí po celej zemi. Pravdepodobne budú propagovať lož, že my, kresťania, sme stáli v ceste nejakému povýšeniu alebo ľudstva na ďalší úroveň, alebo ako to mám nazvať, takže sme boli jednoducho odstránení z tejto zeme. Ľudia dostanú odpovede, budú mať odpovede na to, že prečo sa deje toto svetové násilie, prečo vznikli problémy životného prostredia, samozrejme mory, nejaké pandémie, epidémie, politické rozdiely a spôsob vytvorenia jednej svetovej jednoty jednoducho musí nastať. a mnoho ďalších znepokojujúcich problémov vrátane toho, čo ešte len príde. Samozrejme, že všetky tieto domnelé odpovede však budú klánstvo. Nemáme žiadne odpovede o týchto tvorivých schopnostiach týchto padlých anjelov, čo všetko oni v podstate dokážu urobiť, ako oklamať ľudí, ale dokázali vyrobiť neľudské tela, alebo teda nadprirodzené lietadlá, či inú technológiu, ktorú predtým nikto nevidel. A samozrejme všetko to bude určené na klamanie, na obrovský podvod, na ako klánstvo pre národ. Za pomocou teda projektu Bluebeam. No ale cieľom týchto démonických entít je vytvoriť príbeh. Nejaký príbeh, ktorý v podstate odrádza pozornosť od Boha, od samotného Ježiša, v Biblie, stvorenia a vlastne vsádzajú na pochybnosti do myslí zraniteľných ľudí, ktorí tu ostanú a budú sa s nimi snažiť manipulovať. Takže budú sa snažiť vytvoriť obrovský klam a odviesť pozornosť od toho hlavného, a to je to, že to bol v podstate Ježiš, ktorý vytrhol svoju cirkev preč. Takže tu sa znova budú sa snažiť o to, aby sa ľudia v podstate stali akousi masou jednotného myslenia, len to, čo oni chcú, aby si tí ľudia mysleli. Taktiež čoskoro verím, že Vatikán a vlády sveta sa zúčastnia tohto klánstva a budú v podstate následovať tento krok tomuto podvodu. Pamätajte, Ježiš nás varoval, že posledné dni, teda tesne pred vytrhnutím, budú poznačeným veľkým podvodom. Taktiež NASA ešte v roku 2023 zorganizovala prvé verejné stretnutie o UFO. NASA teda oznámila, že analyzuje pozorovania na oblohe, ktoré sa nedajú identifikovať ako letecké alebo prírodné javy. Priatelia, zostaňte v modlitbe, zostaňte v Pánovej prítomnosti a zostaňte v slove Božom, pretože len v tom je pravda. Maranata.
The director and producer of this film, UFO Disclosure, The Coming Great Deception, the Luciferian Endgame. I shot the footage in 2016 and we edited it and released the film in 2017. Of December of that year, 2017, on Tucker Carlson's show, he had a guest on, Commander David Fravor, who was a former F-18 fighter pilot. Fravor had an encounter over the Pacific Ocean with a tic-tac shaped UFO. Tucker asked Commander David Fravor, in your own words, what do you think this was? Fravor looked right at the camera and said, whatever this was not of this earth. One. That's a groundbreaking statement. We've never heard anything like that before, especially on the mainstream media, as it were. Since then, our government has stated on the record that UFOs or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, are real. Folks, what are we to make of this? The reason I circled back and re-edited this film is I believe that disclosure is now being rolled out. We see it month after month after month. The purpose of this film is to arm you with what I believe is the truth, that these are not extraterrestrials from some other galaxy. They are in fact interdimensional entities that are messengers of deception. As you know, this film is for free. All I would ask is that you pass it forward. Share it with your loved ones, family members, your pastor. We are told, we are warned, in ancient prophetic texts, that men would faint from fear from what is coming upon the earth, that the dragon would come with all signs and lying wonders, that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. What are we to make of those statements? They are dire warnings from thousands of years ago. I truly believe we are in a window of time that is unprecedented, unlike any other time in history. We are being told by our government that the UFO or UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, is actually real, that we have in our possession off-world vehicles. In my opinion, when they really show up, when there's full disclosure, everything will change. However, these are not extraterrestrials from some faraway galaxy. They are, in my opinion, interdimensional entities that have a nefarious agenda. They are messengers of deception and masters of deceit. They lie and do so habitually. And I would ask you, who is the father of lies? In this film, you will see what I believe is incontrovertible evidence that the phenomenon is not only real, but it has a very dark side, a very nefarious agenda, which is why we call it the coming great deception and Luciferian endgame.
My name is Alan Matthews. I've seen a UFO.
I've seen a UFO.
And I saw a UFO.
A UFO.
And so we all went up to the window and we could see this giant UFO.
And saw 3 or 4 orbs that were up in the sky doing circles and erratic movements up and down in circular motion.
And all of a sudden we see this light in the sky, and I asked my husband, is that a plane? And he said, I don't think so. And so we kept watching it, and it hovered over the treetops, and you could see the flashing lights around it. It was round. See the flashing lights around it, and then you could see the windows and lights in the windows, but you couldn't see inside the windows.
And this particular night we looked over into a field and saw 3 hovering lights.
This thing was huge, and it was, well, I didn't know until I started using the camera, but this thing was moving around and shifting and all kinds of things.
And I was driving that night. It was quite late at night, and I started to see some kind of orange flary lights in the desert. And so I kept looking at them while I was driving. And they seemed to be jumping up and down and There was no sound of a helicopter or a plane.
And I saw these two balls of light, these orbs, and they were perfectly round, and it was hard because it was dark to get a perspective on how far away they were, but they looked to be about 6 feet in diameter, and they were floating. To me, it looked like about 50 feet from my car.
And it kept coming closer. It was just this green or orange orb with like a red T in it. It kept coming and coming, and then it shot straight west across the Pacific Ocean.
That came forward, it just came out of nowhere, and it was a white light. And then within seconds, another one joined it above it, and then a third one joined it to the right of it. So they stayed in a triangular shape, and they hovered for a while.
It floated in a way I've never seen anything float. It didn't have a sound. It didn't have, it had no air. You couldn't hear anything like a helicopter's propellers.
My wife, I said, Jen, come out here and look at this. And that was actually before it had disappeared. So she watched it too for a few, I suppose, minute or so. And it moved around in different directions.
And the object was like hovering over the trees. It wasn't moving.
It went at an incredible speed, stopped, and then did a turn that would absolutely been impossible.
But as the lights came closer and closer, it struck me that there was no sound whatsoever.
And it had different colors of lights that went all the way around it. It hovered for about 20 minutes as we watched it, and then it went down in between some mountains.
Since maybe half a mile, 3/4 of a mile away, it was a triangle, a black triangle about like this, and it had a tail on the bottom of it with a slit in it, and I could see the clouds going past.
Al, you've had multiple experiences, and some of these experiences were very troubling to you. I want to go back to really the beginning of your life, where you had your first encounter, and what was that like? What were you thinking when you saw this thing?
I was just a young guy. I was out on a hockey rink in Ottawa, middle of winter, with my twin brother and probably about 8 other kids. Beautiful sunny day, not a cloud in the sky. And one of the guys looks up and says, "What's that?" We all stopped and looked up. We saw 3 UFOs, that's what we even called them back then, hovering in formation, like a triangle. The sun was beaming off these things. We looked at them and we're all like mesmerized, going, "What are those?" And all of a sudden, they moved like that in the sky, just darted and then stopped again. Everyone ran into the shack, the changing room, except for me. I stayed out on the middle of the ice and stared at these things, and I said, in my mind, I said, I need to know what these things are. Right after that, I got an angelic feeling. That's the only way I can describe it. Angelic feeling of these things, of warmth and love.
Euphoria?
Euphoria is another word you could use.
What did the craft look like?
They were like disc-shaped objects. They were all exactly the same size, color? No sound, silver with
dull silver, bright silver?
Bright silver with the sun just beaming off these things, and no sound. It was very spooky. Never seen anything like that.
How close were they to you?
I would say a mile away, because this pollution plant where they were hovering over was a mile away from the rink.
Okay, and they were right over that?
Hovering right over, maybe 100 feet up.
Okay,
yeah.
Wow.
Pretty crazy.
Now, this was the first of many experiences that would follow that.
That's correct.
And I want to sort of cut to the chase here. There was one incident and it had to do with this woman who basically changed her appearance right in front of you. Tell us about that.
That was mind-blowing. That was in 2008, September. I'll always remember that. I was working for Williams Moving and Storage for their overseas division. We had a container coming in from Kuwait. The lady's name was Diane Kelly. I met her with one of my employees. I brought him along to give a hand. He had heard all my stories. And he didn't diss me. He said, you know, I've heard strange stuff like this. My parents know about it. He didn't make fun of me or anything like that. And anyway, we met this woman. She showed up in her car. I said, hi, I'm Al. This is so-and-so. We're here to unload your container. Welcome to Canada. Shook her hand. And I noticed she was a very pretty lady, well-dressed. She was wearing the weirdest glasses I've ever seen in my life. They were just like off the charts. I'm like,
How so? What do they look like?
they were black and wrapped around. So it would cover the side of her eyes so no sun would get in.
Okay.
So I sort of figured, oh, maybe she has an eye problem or something.
Sure.
But anyway, we moved on from there. The conversation went this way. I said, for some reason, it was September, the rainy season's coming in Vancouver, and I was just making simple conversation. I said, why are you moving from Kuwait? It's so nice over there now, the war's over, and you know, you're coming back here. And she goes, she changed totally. She goes, there's gonna be another war. And for some reason I said, well, don't you believe in a higher power? I don't know why I said that, but that's what I said. And she looked at me and she goes, what do you mean now, UFOs? And I'm like, what?
So out of the blue, she just
said that.
This.
And I said,
And she
what?
still has the dark glasses.
Yes, that's right. I look at my other guy that's working for me, and he just sort of shrugs his shoulders. He heard her. And I go, what do you mean by that? And she goes, we were supposed to meet. I know that you know. And I go, know what? She goes, I know you've been taken by them many times, and so have I.
So let me get this straight. You've never met this woman before?
Not at all.
Not at all. She has no idea who you are.
Exactly.
I mean, she has no idea of not only does she not know who you are, but she has no access to figure out who you are.
Oh, totally. Like nothing.
So she's saying something which completely startles you. Is that a fair?
My jaw dropped.
Okay.
I'm thinking, is she reading my mind? So.
But she looked human.
Totally human.
Totally human. Okay.
Totally human.
At this point.
Except for those weird glasses,
Okay.
but then
and
again.
you dismissed that with the eye thing.
That's right. I'm thinking something else, right? But once she did that, I'm thinking, oh my God, here we go again. It's fast forward 2008 now when this happened, and my encounters back east that got very, very disturbing were in 1993 and 94. I got out of Ottawa, drove out from there in 2 days to Vancouver to get away from this stuff, and this is how many years later?
So you were trying to flee the experiences.
They got so
UFO
traumatic back east, I had to get out of there.
Okay.
Scary, beyond scary. So then this happens, and nothing had happened after I moved out here until I met this lady.
Okay.
Yeah, that was shocking. She would do things like in the elevator going up to the floor where we're storing her furniture, she would whisper in my ear and say, they're listening. I go, who's listening?
They're listening.
They're listening. I go, who's listening? And she goes, them, you know, the Greys. She goes, they're always watching. And I told her,
you never had her. You never conversed with any of this stuff, and she's coming out and letting you know.
And starting to spook me and my other assistant.
Sure.
I said to her, I mean, that's just out of the blue to start doing this stuff. I said, look, I'm here to do a job. You're really starting to creep me out. That's the word I had to use.
And that would, I mean, it would creep anybody out. I mean, you would, you know, what's going on here? What are you talking about? This woman sounds really crazy, certifiable to say things like this.
I got the job done.
Okay.
What I did do, and I think it's human nature, I gave her my number.
Okay.
Because...
Mistake number one.
Big mistake number one, and it was just like human interest and how do you know this stuff? I need to eventually talk to you more. I gave her my number. As you said, big mistake. She phoned me up about a week later and said, oh, I'm just down the road from your place, because I told her the area where I live. And she goes, why don't you come down for a drink after work? So I said, sure. I'm with my buddy, once again, that met her the first time.
The same guy?
Yes.
Okay.
I said, hey, do you want to come? I'm just going to go home and clean up. And he goes, not a chance. He goes, what are you doing? Stay away from that. I said, no, I got to find out. Just my intuition, I got to find out more about this. He goes, no, I'm not going. I went. And that's when the strangest thing ever happened in my life, and I've had some strange things. I walked into their place, I buzzed up, her friend answered the door, it was her apartment, a beautiful two-story condo right on the Fraser River, obviously in BC. And they're both out on the deck, and they have these big glasses of wine.
Now, did the friend look normal to you?
Totally normal.
Okay.
And she introduced
no sunglasses?
No, just normal.
Okay.
No sunglasses. She introduced her friend. We sat down on the deck. She's still wearing those strange glasses. Their glasses of wine are right in front of me on a table. And out of the corner of my eye, I noticed this massive black fly in her wine glass. And it's almost like it was stuck to the glass. It didn't make sense. It wasn't moving, and I pointed it to her. I said, oh, look, there's a big fly in your wine glass. I'll grab some Kleenex and get it for you. She smiled at me and she goes, no, I'll get it. She put her finger in the wine glass. She didn't crush the fly. The fly stuck to her finger, and she put it towards her mouth and went like this. And I just looked at her and I go, holy smokes. So that's the starting of how strange this got, and it only got stranger. From there, she took off her glasses. She got on top of me while I was sitting in my chair, and she started lifting up my shirt. And I said, what are you doing? And she goes, oh, how old are you? You're well preserved.
Let me stop you there. So she gets up from the table, she comes up over to you, and you allow her. Now, is that like a normal reaction for you? Would you have? No, because you have a girlfriend at this time.
That's right.
So this is kind of weird that you were allowing her to do this.
At first, I was once again shocked. After the fly thing, she sits on me, and I realized she'd been drinking, and
so this is not typical behavior for you.
No, not at all.
Okay, so this is something normally you wouldn't allow this.
No, okay. I figured it's because she'd been drinking, but it got a little carried away when she started asking me how old I was. And the glasses were off, as I said. She went to kiss me, and I pushed her away, and her eyes shape-shifted.
Now, when you say what did they look like before? What did they?
Just normal. I don't know if they're brown eyes. Or they certainly weren't like blue eyes or emerald eyes. I would have noticed that right away. I think they were just normal, darker looking eyes, but the whites were white. When I pushed her back, when she went to kiss me, I pushed her back. Her eyes shape-shifted. The whites went to a golden color with black streaks, and her pupils shrunk. I upset her, and that's what happened. When I pushed her back, her eyes shape-shifted, and I pushed her off me. That was my reaction. And I said, what the heck was that? And she gave me the most evil laugh you've ever heard. And I got the heck out of there.
In this next segment, you'll hear from two people who've never met, and there's no collusion between them. Yet there are similarities in their stories. What I mean by this, both of them have something, what I call UFO brain fog. We'll talk more about it after you hear their testimony.
In 1998, I was moving to Colorado, and I was driving through Kansas, which is very flat. It's a plain. My brother's girlfriend was in the passenger seat. My brother was asleep in the back seat. We're driving, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and off in the horizon was a large glowing orb, orange. It was smaller than the sun, orange like the sun, but it didn't push out sunlight like the sun would. It was the light was condensed into a ball, and it looked like it was miles and miles and miles ahead, but it was, pretty big. Not as big as the sun, but pretty big. We stared at it for 20 or 30 minutes, me and the passenger, my brother still being asleep in the back seat. We stared at it, we kept staring at it, we stared at it. And in the blink of an eye, the orb went from miles ahead of us, right beside our vehicle, and followed us for a good 15 seconds probably. When the orb came beside us, me or the passenger could not say a single word. We both looked over at it. My brother in the back seat even woke up and he looked over at it. And within a few seconds, it was just gone. After it was gone, all three of us, we said nothing to each other. We kind of just stared back at the road and just kept driving. And we ended up going to a rest stop probably an hour and a half later and stopping for a rest. And that's when the conversation got brought up again, like, what did we see? But after it vanished from our eyes, like from the side of the car, we didn't say anything. We weren't even really in awe. It was like no facial expressions. We were just kind of just focused back on driving.
I was a freshman in high school. Me and my sister was in a chapter called Future Homemakers of America, which was a chapter for all girls. We was at a Halloween party at our high school, and we had some girls with us that were in a foster home that was not able to attend unless they had a way to and from the party. So my sister offered to do that, and there was 12 of us in the car. As we was dropping the girls off, it got down to where there was just 6 of us girls. 3 of the 6 were girls that were in current foster care. As we were taking them home, we had saw lights, and they were saying it was probably just a truck, someone mud running. And I was telling them that, you know, they weren't familiar with the area and there was no roads there, that it couldn't be a truck, that was a lot of trees, and on top of the trees we seen, you know, a shape and light, almost like running lights. And we stopped to look at whatever this was, and they were saying it was a truck, and I explained to them, and then they finally realized that it was trees, and the object was like hovering over the trees. It wasn't moving, and that there was multiple lights. And we got scared, and I told my sister who was driving, I said, you need to just go. And she was speeding. I remember her speeding, but it was like we weren't moving. And as we finally got to the house to drop the foster girls off, the foster mother came out and was cursing us and said that we were hours late. And as I looked at my watch, there was no way that we were hours late, because we had left the school approximately 30-40 minutes prior to that and already had dropped off 6 girls. But according to the mother, we were hours late, and she was irate. And we all, to this day, have talked about these memories, and we know that we seen a UFO or something that was not ordinary, and we all now are in our 30s and 40s and still all remember this. And that was what I believe to be a UFO.
So let's examine the testimonies from these individuals. 3 people driving in a car in Kansas in the middle of a night, experiencing something which is absolutely phenomenal. This large orange orb comes next to the car and paces it for 15 seconds. Then the orb leaves. And these folks sit there and concentrate on driving. That's not a normal reaction. There's no way. Can you imagine if it happened to you? You'd be talking about it, you'd go, oh my God, what was that? You stop the car, you get out, you'd look. No, we just concentrated on driving. That is completely irrational. UFO brain fog, in my opinion. Then we have the woman's encounter. We were speeding, but we weren't going anywhere. She tells her sister, let's go, quick, get out. And her sister, and she goes, we were speeding, but we weren't going anywhere. That's impossible. The key here is when they get back to the foster mother's home, and the woman comes out and she's irate, because they are hours late. They had missing time. They don't know. The people who were taken, who were speeding and not going anywhere, had missing time. They're hours late. The phenomenon is real. And UFO brain fog sets in, and you can hear it. We were speeding, but we weren't going anywhere. That's not a rational statement. Folks, this phenomenon is real. And there are people that you know that have actually had experiences like this and are too afraid to come forward. However, the veil has been now lifted off, and we can pretty much talk about everything related to UFOs. Why? Because it's all over the media. Once again, this is the coming Great Deception. You had an experience while you were flying. Tell me about that.
I did. I was flying from Lima, Peru to Mexico City.
Okay.
And the captain hit my left arm and said, what do we have here, Dennis? And I looked up and I saw a very bright light about 40 degrees off our left of our nose, about 10 degrees above the horizon. And very quickly we could discern that it was coming towards us, directly towards us. And this one light turned into two lights, as an automobile does as it comes closer to you. And very quickly it turned into beams of light. And there was a beam that was pointed forward relative to our direction. As it stopped beside us, as it came in directly towards us at a very fast speed.
Very high.
Between the lights, there were a row of windows, maybe 18, 20 windows that were rectangular. They weren't round, but the perception we got was that it was very close.
So it was pacing with you?
It was formation flying, yeah.
Okay.
And for quite a while.
And how long did the craft pace
we figured about 7 minutes.
7 minutes. And then how did it leave the scene?
The beams of light angled down about 30 degrees and increased in intensity, and the thing just shot away.
When you say
up
shot
and away.
away,
It just rapidly disappeared. But say 50 miles in 5 seconds while you're looking at 36,000 miles an hour.
It's impossible. We don't have anything like that today.
Oh no, it was, it defied the centrifugal force.
Did you write a report?
Yes. We filled out a form from Project Blue Book.
Okay.
The Smithsonian Institute wrote me, and I think I've got a report in there as well. Obviously, it's something that is real, and it happens, and we should communicate it.
I filmed this video out of the window, my living room window of my trailer, and basically I didn't even realize it. I just looked out the window for no apparent reason, just to check on the surroundings outside. I see this white thing in the sky, and it's brighter than normal. And at first thought, I was like, man, that must be Venus, because this is January and it's in the southwestern sky. This is Venus. And it's like, no, it can't be Venus. That thing is huge. So, and you're thinking, okay, Venus and Saturn are kind of aligned, like they are kind of right, or they was a few months ago, which makes it bigger. But this thing was huge, and it was, well, I didn't know until I started using the camera, but this thing was moving around and shifting and all kinds of things. So this was on January, I believe, January 22nd of 2009 when I filmed this out of my window. It would move in and move out, it would shift, and the object has like some type of, you would almost call them like railroad tracks at the top third of the object, and it would move, it would shift, it would rotate. Then towards the end of the video, it almost looked three-dimensional, and then it almost looked like it was color bursting and burning with fire, then it would go back to its normal shape.
My name is Randy Clark, and about 1965, I was in a little town in Indiana, and playing music with a friend of mine. Came out of his place, went to put my equipment away, and I heard a strange sound like being close to a power plant. And I looked at the back of my car. I thought there was some sort of electronic thing going wrong for electric in those days. And then I went to put my amp in the trunk, and I thought maybe that the trunk light was shorting out. And I turned around and looked, and right over the street, at telephone pole high, was this silver sort of I guess for a lack of a better name, a cigar-shaped craft, no wings. And it was just very slowly moving at a very slow speed like this. And it had 3 lights on it, light in the front, the 2 lights on the side that were amber colored. And I took off running towards my friend's house because quite frankly, scared me. And that flight or fight thing, it happens real fast. So anyway, hit his door and hollered at him, and he came running out, big-eyed, bald, because he had 2 children. He thought something happened to them, because I was extremely excited. We got out the front yard, I pointed to the sky, and by this time it was to the, would have been a little west of his house, right just out in front of it, about the corner of his house. He had the same experience. He went to take off and run, and I grabbed him because I realized it was going away from us. And it just kept going down the street till it got to the end of the street. The craft was probably about 40 feet long, maybe, if about like that probably, and probably about, I would think, about 16 to 20 feet wide. Anyway, it got down to the end of the street, and it bobbled like this and made absolutely no noise and just disappeared. I mean, so fast that you could blink and it wouldn't be there. But there was no propulsion, no noise, nothing. It just disappeared.
My name is Terry Staley, and I saw a UFO. Well, when I was 12 years old, I was babysitting for the doctor next door, and I came out about, it was probably about 10 in the evening, and I was walking across the driveway to my grandmother's house, and I looked up in the sky, and there was a formation of probably, I'd say about 12 of them. There was, maybe 3 or 4 across, and then the rest of them tailed behind. And the doctor saw me looking up in the sky, and so she walked out, and she looked up, and then my mother and grandmother walked out, and they saw, and then we watched them for a little while. They were all flying in a formation, and then we saw an airplane come through and saw it flashing red and green, and the minute that the airplane came close to these things, they just all scattered.
My name is Dr. Roger. I'm relating an activity that happened to me back in July of 2014 while I was living up in Silver Spring, Maryland. And what happened to me as I was driving home into our driveway, which is kind of a secluded property with no lights or no anything around it, is that I was driving down the driveway and going into the garage and noticed something out the corner of my eye up above the neighbor's property, which is next to us. And I stopped the car, got out of it, and started to take a look at what was going on, and saw 3 or 4 orbs that were up in the sky doing circles and erratic movements up and down in circular motion. It seemed rather odd to me, so I felt no fear, no kind of anxiety or anything at seeing this. I just kind of said, oh wow, there's some lights out there. And I thought to myself too that this is kind of weird, and went to take a little look and walked up to my backyard, which would have been a little bit closer, and these orbs were about 100-200 feet off the ground to my right as I look up at it. And I thought that this is really, really strange because they didn't make any noise. It was just movement going around and up and down and moving all around. 3 or 4 of them, I can't recall exactly how many, but there was at least 3. And at that time I was thinking, hey, maybe someone's just playing with our minds and using a flashlight or something like that. But it was not, because the property was right next to us. There was nobody around in the whole area. And it was just, the movements of these orbs was just really erratic.
People come up to me at conferences and tell me stories that they've never shared with anyone else. You're about to hear one such story by a gentleman who would not come on camera, but I believe his testimony is true, which is why I included it here. He talks about deep underground military bases and military personnel working side by side with what can only be described as the Greys. Here is his testimony.
I spent 28 years working in top secret classified military intelligence operations, and one of the most honest men that I worked with, that's about 60 years old, was over my home 6 months ago and said he has a brother-in-law that works in a similar compartment of top secret classified operations, and that he actually works somewhere in the Southwest in a desert area with these aliens, because I was trying to explain to him about what I've been learning through you and through these conferences about what are these UFOs and aliens. They're really demonic angels that are coming in and out of these dimensional portals. And he actually confirmed in my home that his brother-in-law works in another area of the government that we can't talk about, but it dealt with these aliens and that he worked side by side with them.
Did he describe what they looked like to you?
No, he just told me what he has heard through his brother-in-law, who also wouldn't exaggerate or pull his chain.
Did his brother-in-law state whether he felt they were benevolent or malevolent?
We didn't get into that. He was very careful just to give me a hint that as I was explaining things I've learned through you and my own experiences in life, that his brother-in-law actually works with these non-human entities, exactly.
And did he give you is it ongoing now? I get the impression that this was going on.
I still talk to this gentleman who retired and came back into the world we worked in, and this stuff is continuous.
Continuing. Thank you for being bold and courageous and coming on the record.
You're welcome, sir.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
One thing I'm really curious, you've been following the whole UFO phenomena for a number of years.
Yeah.
Do you think, first of all, disclosure is imminent? And what do you think these craft are?
And it's just preparing the minds of the people. And you look at other documents, even government documents, that's their plan, is they really believe that years ago to spring this on the American people or people around the world at large, they'd freak out. And so you have to slowly, step by step, incrementally get them into that mindset. And I really think that Hollywood too is being used as that propaganda tool to get used for that kind of a scenario. So that's the propaganda issue and the step-by-step issue. But certainly you look at some other documents and it's happening. You got, of course, the Vatican's involved in this as well, believe it or not. And also you look at, even just the recent with the WikiLeaks dump. Right smack dab, and one of the emails to John Podesta was talking about imminent disclosure, again with the Vatican, working with the countries around the world for a space treaty. And this is the actual document. We're not making this up. There's no conspiracy theory here. It's right there. So imminent disclosure, I think, is ramping up. I hold to the thing that if in fact UFOs, aliens, that whole scenario is in fact going to be used as an excuse to explain away the rapture of the church, then wow, we don't know the day nor the hour, but if you see the events of imminent disclosure ramping up, how much closer is that event that the church needs to be aware of? But as far as our identity, it is something that I've had a passion for, actually, even before I got saved. I've been saved 23 years at the time of this recording, and but before I got saved, unfortunately, I come from a non-Christian background. I got involved into the occult and New Age, and wonder who shows up when you get involved in that stuff. It's unfortunately aliens, demons, UFOs, that whole 9 yards. And of course, the New Age instructed to channel and do that stuff and become a medium, which God forbids in the scripture, obviously, because it's demonic. I didn't know. You couldn't have convinced me at the time. And of course, being coached at these things, you invite them to come inside you, to speak through you. Now, they wouldn't, say that, hey, we're a demon or we're some horrible, force. We're here to possess you and take you over your vocal cords. Of course not. The New Age term to seduce people is these are our space brothers.
Because there was remote viewers who were working for the government years ago who were supposed to be remote viewing like Russian spy secrets, and they, much to their surprise, ended up remote viewing some alien entities. And so that's why I think it's relevant that I mention that in my life I'd been developing my psychic ability, and I was working on doing a movie about the life of Jim Morrison from The Doors, and I, much to my surprise, ended up getting some spirit communication from Jim Morrison's spirit, I believe. And why that's relevant is that while I was exploring psychic ability in other dimensions of reality with spirits and ghosts, or call you whatever you want to call it, I stumbled upon that I could also have communication with other type of what I think is an alien energy or alien beings in a similar dimensional situation as you would with psychic ability.
They're from the star system Pleiades, or they're orbiting planet Earth. You had brought it before, and I remember coming across this in the New Age days. The Ashtar Command was
sure, the Ashtar Command, right?
And that they're here to help us in the time of calamity. Well, we know a time of calamity is coming. The Bible calls it the 7-year tribulation, but they spin it. And they spin it and thinking that that's why they're here. They're our saviors. Jesus has got it all wrong. And oh, by the way, when you're left behind and you're in those events, it's okay. Just hang on. It's Mother Earth cleansing herself. And
tell me about your encounter. What did you see?
Well, this was before I got saved.
Okay.
And so, not so surprisingly, I had this encounter because I'm involved in the occult and New Age. I'm over there, and I'm there with my girlfriend at the time. That night, the only thing I remember was just like I hear the bang, big, loud thunder clap. And after this whole experience was over, I remember it's like, wait a second, there's nothing on the ground. I thought it would rain. It was raining. I was like, what's going on? So the next thing I know, I woke up from a dead sleep in absolute stark terror. And we're laying side by side there in the bed, and she's in front of me, and my chest is up against her back. And she said what woke her up was my chest pounding so hard.
Your heart.
She's dead asleep, but I was pounding so hard, such a physical response that.
Why were you afraid? Where was the fear coming from? Well, what's the source of the fear?
Well, the source of the fear was, man, there's something in this room. And I knew something was in this room.
Now you're wide awake at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
And frankly, I didn't want to open my eyes because I knew when I opened my eyes, I'm going to see something horrible. You could just sense it. And just the sensing of the fear was enough. But I went ahead and my heart's boom, boom. And now she's awake at this point, but she's still laying there too. And I'm literally, I don't know if it was paralysis or just could have very well just been, I am immobilized in fear. I didn't want to move because if you move, then they're gonna, what's gonna happen? Maybe I can just sleep it out, but no. But I opened my eyes, and her shoulder's right here. I opened my eyes, and I saw two beady eyes staring at me. I don't remember. They were like glowing. I don't remember what color, red or green or whatever. But it was just like, oh no. And then man, my heart's really going down.
In 2016, I sat down with author lecturer Paul McGuire, who believed, as I did even back then, that we were on the cusp of UFO disclosure. In December of 2017, that happened with Commander David Fravor on Tucker Carlson's show. Since then, there's been a steady stream of people in all forms of media talking about the validity of the UFO phenomena. Here is my interview with Paul McGuire.
I absolutely think that there's going to be disclosure in one form or another. I'm not certain about what that will be. Number one is I think we're right on the verge. When I say on the verge, it could happen this year or next year, where the scientific community is going to make an announcement that will reverberate throughout the whole world, where they will essentially say that we now have genetic evidence that planet Earth was seeded by some kind of extraterrestrial race X amount of years ago. I'm absolutely convinced of that. Because the theory of evolution is under attack, and this still takes place somewhat under the jurisdiction of the theory of evolution. But the idea is that we were seeded by an extraterrestrial race. I think an announcement is coming soon.
Well, I certainly think a disclosure is imminent, and not just because I say so, but if you, as you've done many times and pointed out, there's all kinds of soft disclosure that's going on.
There's something definitely going on, and there's reports everywhere of sightings of different things.
And so it is, and there are many countries of the world right now that are disclosing, releasing official Ministry of Defense files. Our own Paul Hare, former Defense Minister of Canada, he's been going around Canada and the States involved with disclosure.
And you can go back to the 1980s, and they're talking about it in an imminent kind of a way. In the 1990s, they're talking about it in an imminent kind of way. It's always, we're ready to come. We're almost there.
In terms of disclosure, whether it is like a fallen angel technology disclosure, because I believe that occult technology exists, fallen angel technology exists, or whether it is a psychological, like a Project Bluebeam, where it's some kind of very sophisticated illusion. It would have to be pretty sophisticated. But we're on the verge of something, because we have geneticists saying that we've got the DNA pool of mankind has extraterrestrial DNA in it. We have this convergence of scientific information. So absolutely yes, a disclosure is coming. And with the stuff coming out of the Vatican and other sources, it could happen in a year now, or any month actually.
In many ways, Al Matthews became the centerpiece of this entire film. Al had been taken, abducted numerous times throughout his life. In this following testimony, you'll hear how Al was driving home from work, and in a matter of seconds, he was switched off. Hours later, he awakened in his car, hundreds of miles from where he last remembered. These entities have a nefarious agenda. They can manipulate space, time, matter, and energy that completely defy our physics. Here is Al's testimony. Al, you had another encounter which you talked to me about last night, which was very alarming, very disturbing, where the entire car was taken. And I've heard stories like this from other people who have been abducted. Not only were they taken, but the entire car was taken. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and I've heard stories like that too, and I would be the last person that ever thought that would happen to me. I was driving home, the middle of summer, another beautiful, beautiful day, no clouds in the sky. I take the same exit every time. It's up in Quebec, north of Ottawa. It's called the Tenaga exit. My cottage is 5 minutes from there. Okay, I'm approaching the exit, and I drive past it with no discernment, and I feel myself, the only way I can put it is being shut off. I can feel myself slowly being shut off.
Now, you've had this experience before.
Yes.
So you know what's about to happen.
I know what's about to happen.
And you're terrified, or you're happy?
There's no reaction to me. Even missing my exit, it was nothing. That was nothing. It's just, I missed the exit, no discernment, and just being slowly shut off. And it's happened so many times, it takes 3 to 4 seconds to shut you off. That's how many times it's happened.
Wow. And then what happens?
Then what happens is, I don't know. It was hours and hours later. This was around 6 p.m. in the evening, in the summer. It doesn't get dark out till about 9:30. And the next thing I know, I'm in my car, lowered in the brightest beam of light you've ever seen in your life, the brightest, whitest light, in my car, vibrating, just vibrating like this in this light as the car is floating down to the ground. All I see is black around me outside the light. The car, it sounds crazy, the car started itself, and I'm watching it steer on these winding roads in the dark. And I'm just looking at it. It was probably maybe 10 seconds. I had a calmness come over me from being vibrating to put my hands up and start steering the car. I'm steering and I'm looking, where am I? It's pitch black out. I looked at my watch. It was 10:15. That's 4 hours of missing time. The first sign I saw was Maniwaki, 10 kilometers. That's 120K from my cottage.
So you were completely in another area.
Gone.
And what was your reaction when you realized where you were, when you were back in the car?
Absolutely traumatized. I found my way home. I went into the fetal position, crying, saying, why me? What is this? Why are you doing this to me? And I got the hell out of there. I moved.
Since you came to Jesus, has these experiences stopped?
Yes. I've had little things, what I call little things, of seeing ships. I've seen triangles, boomerangs. I've talked and counseled other abductees from my experiences, and I've noticed even one gentleman, I won't mention his name, very well spoken in the banking industry. Our encounters are almost identical. And now he's turned his life around. He thought they were aliens.
So he's come to Jesus also.
He has. He reads the Bible all the time. He's
because
a changed
he realized
person.
This is supernatural.
It's totally.
What would you say to pastors who don't want to tell their congregation about this, and yet there are people in their congregation who have seen lights in the sky, who have had encounters? Maybe they've been taken like you were. What do you say to those pastors?
What would I say to them? It's time to wake up. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. This stuff is all around the world now. It's in the Bible. The warnings are in the Bible. Do not ignore them. Do the right thing. People need to know. They need to know.
They need to know.
Yeah.
What would be your closing thoughts? What would you tell someone who's been immersed in this, who's been taken several times, let's say, and believes that these entities are good, benevolent? What would you say to them?
They need to do their homework, because they're not. They're deceivers. They're compulsive liars. They're evil. There's good angels, and now I obviously know there's bad angels, and I've been helped by the good ones, and I'm not the only one. There's many people. People need to do their homework and research this stuff and realize the deception that's going on with this is off the charts.
Thanks for coming on the record.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
God bless you.
Great. God bless you too. Richard Shaw and I made 10 films in the Watcher series. Rick was the director and producer of the series. It'll be 2 years this coming August since Rick passed, very unexpectedly. In all of those films, we featured Dr. Roger Lear. Dr. Lear was a podiatrist. He was also one of the first people ever to extract what we believe is an alien implant, and we show that in one of the films. The following clip that you're about to see was taken in Dr. Roger Lear's office, and Dr. Roger is talking about his encounter with a UFO in Turkey. In my opinion, this is the best UFO footage ever taken.
But it's such phenomenal footage. It's not been labeled by me, but it's been labeled by not only video analysts but researchers in the field as being the best.
I agree.
Photography of a UFO and its occupants.
I agree. I concur.
And don't you think also that as a matter of habit or whatever it may be, that when people see things and it looks too good, they say it can't be real.
Sure. Cognitive dissonance kicks in.
Right.
I can't be looking at what I think I'm looking at.
No.
In 2016, I went to Vancouver, Canada, and interviewed many of the people that made their way into this film. I interviewed a woman there, and her testimony was very bizarre and very strange, so I didn't use it. However, I did use it in this particular rendition of the film, and her testimony is very bizarre. What you're about to hear is unaltered, unedited in any way, shape, or form. Remember, this is 2016. And she's saying something on the record, which to me at the time sounded absolutely bizarre. But now, 5 years later, in 2021, when I heard it, the hair stood up on the back of my neck. How did she know? Is it possible that when you open yourself up to these entities, they will tell you what their agenda is? All this to say that UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away. This is the coming Great Deception.
The
powers that be on planet Earth are going to create some kind of situation, either a plague or something, where there will be mandatory vaccines, and in that vaccine, it will genetically alter the violence out of the human race. And some people think that's bad because it could also be used to control us or dumb us down, but some powers that be think they're saving the world because there's too much violence in the world. That's another story. So then I end up, I'm going in, I end up just after that, I'm traveling, videotaping some stuff, and I'm in a tent, and I wake up, and I'm in a tent in the middle of the night, and I hear this sound all around me, and it's like a high-pitched sound frequency. And I get out of the tent, and it's all around me, and I see this thing, and it's like lights going around and around, this massive light thing, and it's like little tiny square windows, and they're going around like this, like, and they're lit up like this, massive, huge thing. And I'm looking at this thing, it's this high-pitched sound frequency all around me, and I'm like, this is like some kind of alien spaceship or something, and then I don't remember anything after that.
There is a book unlike any other book on this planet. Most of you know it as the Bible. And the moment I say that word, some of you cringe back. I get that. I call it the guidebook to the supernatural because, in fact, that's really what it is. There are prophecies from the first book to the last book, from Genesis to the book of Revelation. Those prophecies speak out and call with great specificity events in the future. There's no other book like it. That begs the question, someone is outside of space-time as we know it, calling out the end before the beginning and the beginning before the end, just like prophecy tells us he will. The bottom line is this: we are in a cosmic war. Some of you may or may not believe that. These ships that just appear and then disappear, that defy the laws of physics, that manipulate space-time, matter, and energy. What are we looking at here? The guidebook of the supernatural tells us exactly what we're looking at here. These are, in my opinion, the fingerprints of the supernatural, the fingerprints specifically of the dragon. He's coming back for a last stand. This is why I call it the coming great deception of a Luciferian endgame. So you say, okay, LA, well, I've been abducted, I've been taken, how do I stop it? You just ask. You ask and you receive. You believe on the one who was sent here. His name is Jesus. You ask him into your heart. It's very simple. There's no magic formula. You just ask him. And then you pray and you say, you know, Father, I've done stuff in my life that I'm not proud for. Please come in and change it. If you're being taken, go to him, cry out to him and say, Father, please stop this. I don't want this in my life. In the name of Jesus, please stop it. Invite him in. It happened to me over 40 years ago, and my life has never been the same, and more than likely never will be again. And I thank God for that. Again, it's not religion, it's a relationship with the Son of God and the Father through the power of the Spirit of the living God, the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost. It's available to you. All you have to do is ask. If this resonates with you in any way, shoot me an email, la@lamarzulli.net. Give me your phone number. I'll call you up and pray with you over the phone. But you don't need me to do that. You can invite him right here, right now. He has the power to stop all this stuff because he is the king. And the king is going to return. And many of us believe that return is soon. Thanks for watching. Remember, pass it forward.